Right, welcome back. Now, the debate surrounding the education system in the country is not a new one. We have had several reasons for and against the current 844 system, whereas some boast of the many professionals who have been birthed through the system. Others believe a total overhaul of the system has been long overdue and that it should be aligned to meet the demands of the present world. At the moment, an overhaul of their school curriculum has started, with the Education Ministry releasing proposed regulations that will see the 844 syllabus changed by 2015. The big question is that the way to go? Overhaul the system, or just have the system and perhaps just change one or two things? We're joined by Amos Kaburu, who is an educationist and also a consultant. Welcome to the Power Breakfast Show. And of course, Honorable Beatrice Alachi, nominated Senator. Welcome once again to the Power Breakfast Show. All right, so the debate has always been there, but perhaps let's start with you, Honorable Beatrice Alachi. 844 system. Is there a problem with it?
Thank you, Makazi. I think the most important thing we need to ask ourselves is that after the years after overhauling the standard 7 from 4 system, and now we went into 844, what are the achievements first? Before we start thinking it's a bad system. I know at first we complained a lot, which is true. It's a very expensive system because of the curricula, the books that we had to buy, and even up to date what the parents are buying. So the next question will be, is it the curriculum that we look at? Because the system was to bring in modernization. The system was to try and bring in skills that we believed when you're doing the 844 system, by the time you're finishing, you're more experienced in a few terms. But at the same time, we denied ourselves one thing. We did not have a transition. You go on, you get to Form 4, maybe you're at 15, 16, you're finishing school. So by the time you're even joining campus, you're still very young. Not the way the old system was, where you have a Form 5 and 6, and therefore I can go become a teacher before I join campus. I can go and gain a few experiences before I go to the next level of college. I think that's where we lost it. And that's why maybe many people find it a big challenge. But for now, we need to now ask ourselves, within the system, where did we go wrong? I know we went wrong when, again, we compromised education and we decided we can have public schools and we can have private schools where, when I have the money, I take my kid to get more skills, and at the same time, this other side is deteriorating, and yet it is the side that is taking the huger amount of money from the public sector, but at the same time, the majority of Kenyans will go to that public school. Then we did not ask the next question, how come we have very good people who have achieved, who went through public school? What happened at that time? Then we come now, the pressure in globalization, where now we have to ensure we have free primary education, which is very good, but then were we ready for it? Were we able to bring quality environment for the kids to ensure? Have we ever thought that the foundation of a kid, not at standard 8, where we have a challenge as a country, that we only look at a kid in examination, but from the foundation, from that early childhood education, we lost it. Yet that is where a kid develops cognitive, his attitude, the foundation. The whole thing is at the foundation of a kindergarten, but we have never invested there. So you find that while we move, now we have children wondering, parents are talking about, for example, agriculture. And then you ask yourself, in secondary school, we removed agriculture. It's no longer there. We removed home science. It's no longer there. We thought, even us as parents started complaining, why should my kid carry a djembe to school? Why should they be doing agriculture in school? But you want, after campus, again to go back and now tell a young person, you know you'll survive with agriculture. It's the best, which is true. You know our country, 80%, that is where we get all our wealth, in agriculture. But look at it. In school, we have removed. So for me, there are many issues that we have to look at. We have to look at and ask ourselves, is it just examining that determines your effectiveness as a person? Is it just when you do examination, when you do that KCPE, and then you're moving on? And then when I go to transition, when I'm coming from a private school, and a young child or a young boy who is coming from Mandera, from a public school, who got maybe 200, where I see Kenyans now writing very funny things on social media when a child has 200 marks, without looking environmental-wise. When I'm coming from Kwale, even from Madare, how have I grown within my school life? So those are some of the things also the ministry, and especially now when we are doing selection, should be asking themselves that when we are selecting, when we are saying we are taking the first 400, are we trying to say those who got 200 and it was in Mbita or somewhere in Elgon or somewhere in Mandera, Wajir, did not get 400? It's a question to ask.
Let's hear from the specialist.
Thank you, Motegi. I totally agree with what Mheshimiwa is saying. Any experience from system development requires that a successful system is premised on 3 aspects. That is, 1, you have to talk about leadership and management. You have to talk of financing. And then you have to talk of how to maintain the system for it to be sustainable. My feeling is that, and from the experience I've had interacting with 844, I'm a product of 844, is that 844 was never given a chance in the first place, contrary to what we look at it. Because for proper conceptualization, as Mheshimiwa says, we would have done a little bit better, but we hurried into implementing 844. So moving fast forward, the question becomes, you want to change 844 to what? That is the question.
But they had proposed that last few years ago to change from what?
Yes,
there was a proposal.
And that's what I was just about to come to. Looking through the, you have to ask yourself, why couldn't the government implement the COECH report of 1999, which was the Totally Integrated Quality Education and Training ticket? Moving fast forward, when the late Professor Itoto was minister in 2003, and there was this, the first national conference on education here at KICC that gave rise to the Kamunge recommendations, and then we have the first session of paper of 2005, which follows the first structured approach of planning for education, what we call KESEP, Kenya Education Sector Support Program, 2005 to 2010. Moving forward to when we promulgated the new constitution, and the former minister, Professor Ongeri, appoints the task force, the Odhiambo-led task force that presented its report in 2012. And move forward to 2013, we have all stakeholders meeting at KICC. And I was in the team that was tasked to look at whether we should scrap 844 or not. And for the first time, I have to agree that the issues brought out, especially by the unions, were making a lot of sense. Because the systemic challenges we're facing in terms of implementing 844, the rushed nature of how we implemented 844, McKay came to look at the possibility of establishing a second university, which was more university. How come the issue of changing the system was sneaked in by that regime? I mean, to bring in the 844. To an extent that people now make fun and say that 844 is equals to 0 because you just subtract the, it is 8 minus the 4 which remains with the 4 minus 4 to get 0. But is it really the case? When you critically look at what the goals of education in this country have been, since the Ominde-led Commission of 1964, the Kenya Education Commission of 1963 and 1964, the 6 goals of education that Ominde came up with have all been found relevant to date. It's only during the ticket process that we made the additional 2, education for lifelong learning and education for sustainability. That means that we've had clear goals about this education. When we had all this clamor about changing from 3, 6, 3, 3, and all those kind of things, whether it's about years or not, we need the question is to interrogate: are we just changing 844 into another, changing the number of years that you spend in primary school, or we looking at the critical issues within 844? My belief is that if we were able to fix the issues within 844, then you realize that 844 is capable of delivering. Because look at all the reports coming out. You get that our children are leaving school, they don't have skills. Nobody is not saying that those skills are not necessary. But the issue is that we're having children who are living without the skills necessary. So that is to say that the skills we have are relevant. But then, as Mheshimiwa brought it out, when we ended up to have this proliferation of privatizing education and blame it on the middle class of this country, who live in some imaginary world, imagining that they're living a good life when all they are living on is on credit. The vehicle they are driving, they've bought on loan. I mean, the land, everything is pure on credit. They are financing the public sector by paying a lot of taxes to go into the public sector, and at the same time, they are also taking their children to the private sector. So it becomes a little bit expensive. Because if you spend, for instance, the Odhiambo-led task force recommends that for us to deliver what they are imagining to be the education we need for Vision 2030, we need about 350 billion. But look at the current 844 system. If we are just able to spend 42 billion, we are able to have an additional 100,000 teachers. If we spend an additional 16 billion, we are capable of setting up infrastructure. And that's all 844 is asking for. So why don't you fix just these two critical issues and give 844 a chance for another 5 years and see whether it's not delivering or not? Rather than this question of, I mean, every time we're trying to imagine we should be jumbling up things. I think it's maybe a societal problem. We set up the Senate the following day, we imagine we should scrap it. I mean, we just in that clamor of changing and changing all the time.
All right. Well, we expected this to be more of a debate. Looks like you're talking the same thing, because listening to you, Honorable Alachi, you talked of, let's look back and examine the system. Where did we go wrong? So both of you are basically supporting the 844 system. Nobody's talking about a total overhaul of the system.
I will not talk of an overhaul, because one, I would challenge my own government to tell Kenyans first, have we been able to just manage the system first? Because we have to talk of overhaul, knowing we need more resources to do the overhaul, and then we need to ask ourselves the next question, which Kenyans we are very good at. The negative always, we talk negative of everything we do. That by the time we'll be doing an overhaul, we might find ourselves even in court, because when the system now comes out and it becomes a bit more expensive, parents will run to court the way now we are running for other things because of education. And then the next thing will be what? The Jubilee government now has decided to give us something that we don't understand. So for me, I will ask Kaimenyi, the minister, and they have to be very serious while they are advising the president that indeed we are doing an overhaul that will reduce the cost to parents. But if we know we are going to do an overhaul that is going to be more expensive to parents, then let us just sit on the drawing board and ask our